this conversation is about leadership, and we're concerned about how we train this next generation of leaders to take on the big and demanding leadership challenges facing the world today and in the future. So I'm interested in hearing what you see are those challenges. Also, the conversation I'd like us to explore your own particular views on leadership, what you've learned about leadership, and any recommendations and suggestions that you would have for us as we train this young generation of leaders. What do they need to be trained in?
So I would say one of the things I would greatly recommend, go after your character, pay less attention about your image. Leaders of today are very much spoiled by trying to create a good image and the wake-up image.
Right.
They wake up every morning, how they look at the press, how they look in television. It's unimportant. On the contrary, you must have the strength to understand that if you want really to do something in your life, divorce yourself from the image and work for character.
Work for character?
Yes. I mean, to show that you stand for something.
Right.
That you're not afraid, you're not tired, you're ready to be alone, you're ready to be controversial. It's not a beauty contest. Secondly, you must be sincere about other people. One of our poets says, to love means that to love the smell of your fellow man.
Right.
So don't perfume yourself too much and fall victim of the immediate reaction. Then I believe that you will be always great if you'll serve a great cause.
Now, as you look out in the world today, or over the last 50 years as you've been involved in politics and national and international affairs, have you seen people who have embodied those characteristics, those features that you have admired?
Yes.
Who might that be?
Well, first of all, in my own country, that was David Ben-Gurion.
David Ben-Gurion, right.
He was most of his life alone, attacked from all sides.
Right.
Ostensibly supposed to lose, but he was a man of great character.
Right.
And nobody would move him once he's convinced about something. And also the rare distinction between the nature of winning wars and making peace. Those are two different vocations, two different experiences.
Right.
When I met him, I was a very young man. He was already a legend. I was a nobody in my country, 16, 17 years old.
Right.
He gave me a ride in his car.
Right.
I was so excited. I thought, my God, here I'm going to have a couple of hours with the man I so admired. It was a winterly day, so I came in his car. He put on his coat. He turned his back to me. He forgot about me completely.
Right.
I was so disappointed. Only toward the end of the way, he turned to me all of a sudden and says, you know, Trotsky wasn't a great leader. How did Trotsky came in the car, I don't know, to this very day. But me being so much interested to develop a conversation, so he says, why? He says, what is it? What sort of policy is it? No peace, no war. He says, this is a Jewish invention.
Right.
If you want to be a leader, you have to take the risk and go to war, or to pay the price and make peace. And he says Lenin was intellectually inferior to Trotsky, became a leader because he made a decision. Decide, please. Don't run into two different categories. And understand that if you go to war, you take a risk, you will win, everybody will applaud you, you will be a hero, you'll go into the books of history. history has patience only for the successful, for the mighty, for the wealthy,
Right.
for the killers, whatever you want.
Right.
And if you go to peace, don't hesitate to be alone. Don't look for applause. Your own people maybe are your greatest problem, more than your opponent or the enemy. Because at peace you make concessions, and people say, why the hell did you give up so much?
Right.
Why were you so compromising? Now, peace is compromise and lack of glory.
Yeah.
War is glorious and lack of peace.
You've clearly had to make some tough decisions in your life that have been unpopular, that have had to focus on the substance in order to bring peace to Israel. And just on going through the newspapers, I had this wonderful quote from a journalist back in 1996 after you lost the election. And what they said was, what Israelis saw was a Shimon Peres who perhaps got out too far in front of the voters. They saw a man who may have talked too much of peace with Israel's Arab neighbors. And the journalist says he became seized almost obsessively with the idea of a peaceful relationship in the region. Were you obsessed with it in a way that was to the detriment of bringing enough people along with you that led to the losing of the prime ministership?
Not really. You know, there's a paradox in my life. I lost many elections, but I won all the points. I know people who won elections and they didn't know what to do with their winning the elections.
Right.
And today, when I look back, yes, I lost elections, but the party that opposed me and its head, Sharon, is talking today like myself.
Right, yeah.
The difference is maybe 5, no more, it's 8 years, doesn't matter.
Right.
Now, for me, there is no sense to win an election in order to get the title.
Right.
Not that I say titles are unimportant, but occasionally you can do great things with small titles.
Right. Can you give me an example?
You know, many of the important things I do are being attributed to me was when I hold the post of a secondary rank. I started very early in 1952, when I was 29 years old.
Right.
I was deputy prime minister, deputy defense minister. The prime minister was Ben-Gurion. I was his deputy.
At the age of 29?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was the best season in my life because I wasn't on the front line.
Right.
I didn't have to defend myself every morning and every evening.
Right.
I could dream, I could act. And I'm sure, for example, if I were then a prime minister, I would spend most of my time making peace in the party, satisfying many people, being engaged in many small quarrels. The title and the headlines are great.
Right.
The content is very limited. I know a man who was prime minister 7 years. He did nothing, so he was called prime minister.
Right.
Who cares?
With the many years in politics, in government, and also now out of government, do you feel you've been able to do more to advance the cause of peace? It must be a different activity, but just following on your comment in regards to titles or lack of titles.
If you want to do something, you have to take into account setbacks, mistakes, disappointments. If you want to have a free ride in a first-class vehicle, don't build it down. You have all the time to negotiate difficulties, regressions, setbacks. And it's not enough that you are satisfied with yourself. It's very hard to satisfy other people.
Right.
You know, I was saying, I think by Lloyd George, it says, I'm a man of principles. And one of my principles is expediency.
Yeah.
Don't go too much of our expediency. You don't know what it is.
Right.
It's misleading.
Uh-huh.
Show strengths.
What do you think your strengths are? Or have been, certainly, too, in the past as well?
A total control of my nerve system.
Of your nerve system?
Yeah, my nerve system.
Right.
You know, you wake up every morning, people say, you're a devil, you're misleading. It doesn't give me pleasure.
Right.
Nobody likes it. And day after day, you know, people smear, tell stories.
Right.
Some of them totally unfounded. So at an early age, I took a strategic decision, which is that I shall decide who insults me, not anybody else.
Right.
Because if I should take every insult,
Right.
I wouldn't go through the day.
So, yeah, particularly in politics, you must be attacked from so many quarters, including the press. How do you not take it personally? It must hurt.
It does help.
Yeah.
But then I never forget the cause.
Mm.
I mean, if you want to serve yourself, it's one story. So
Right.
be a film star.
Right.
But if you want to serve a cause, reduce your own sensitivities.
Mhm.
I don't claim that you can ignore them completely. It's painful.
Right. Yeah.
But never forget, what are you doing? Where are you going? What is the final end of your work?
And even at this age, in your early 80s, do you still have a sense of things you want to accomplish?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And what might that be?
I mean, the peace process is not finished. And I think maybe a little bit exaggeratedly so. I think we still have a great deal to contribute.
Right.
And also to carry the hope. I mean, carrying hope is not a matter of minorities or majorities.
Mm.
People are occasionally so pessimistic.
Mm.
And politicians are most of the time so suspicious. The malady of politics is suspicion.
Right.
I don't suggest that they won't be suspicious,
Right.
but not more than it's absolutely necessary.
Right. Someone who lives outside of Israel, you look at Israel and you would think that any Israeli would be cynical, would be pessimistic, given all that's going on in that part of the world. How do you maintain that sense of hope? What openings do you see?
Well, there was one rule again that I learned in my life. You know, when people are thinking, they are thinking in a matter of alternatives.
Mm.
You have a problem, you have two choices, three choices, and you have to select one of the two and go ahead.
Right.
What I learn is that when you think there are two choices, there is a third one,
Right.
untested.
Uh-huh.
And the art of politics is creativity, not negotiations.
Creativity.
Yes, because, I mean, if you negotiate, you know the feelings and positions of the other side, he knows yours. It's a lost case.
Right.
So you have to look for a way that will surprise him, that
Uh-huh.
will surprise you,
Right.
and will relieve him from having a prejudice in your approach. So all the time, all my way of thinking is to look for what I would call a third option,
Right.
the unknown,
Right.
which exists because we are blind, all of us.
Right.
On the other hand, and I'm not saying it just, I mean, for the sake of making a phrase, I was helped by so many people, my God, that while I should be angry with the people who criticize me,
Right.
I must be thankful
Mm.
to the people who helped me
Right.
in such an altruistic way, for no reason, for no interest. And hundreds of people helped, or I was helped by them.
Right.
But I mean, helped by them, I read what they say, I listened to what they have to say, and I gained all the time. You can swim in two seas, in a black sea full of pessimism, in a blue sea
Right.
full of wonderful waves.
Right.
And I don't see why should I spend all my life in the Black Sea. And I mean, reading, listening, learning is really swimming in a sea of wisdom. There are so many wise people.
So in those early years as a 16-year-old, you're already involved in politics, in national affairs, and working with Ben Gurion, with the youth movement. How did you end up getting involved at such an early age? Why this inclination to get so involved in politics?
Well, I have my ideals. I lived in a very large town, a city, Tel Aviv. I went to school. And while being at the school, I thought, I want to be a member of a kibbutz.
Right.
So I left my school. I went to an agricultural school, which is really a youth village. Young children are in their school.
Right.
And by the way, I don't know, maybe it's better for young people to be away from their family and be in a social environment. You know, in England, they call private schools, they call public schools.
Right, right. Yeah.
Most of the British leaders were educated not in their families.
Yes, they go through those public schools.
They went through their public school,
Right.
where they get themselves acquainted and organized and living in a totally different atmosphere.
Right.
I was lucky to be something like it. I mean, I went to an agricultural youth school. I wanted to be a member of a kibbutz. I went to the kibbutz. I spent there something like 10 years.
10 years in a kibbutz?
Yes. I was a shepherd.
A shepherd?
Yes. And all the time dreaming and imagining. You see, most people prefer to remember, which is a mistake. Better to imagine than to remember.
Better to imagine than to remember.
Yes, because there's so little
You're right.
to remember. I mean, remembering is actually forgetting. You remember the things you like. You forget the unpleasant things in
Right,
your life.
selective memory, right.
All of us have selective memories.
Yeah.
When it comes to imagination, you can select
Right.
your imaginations.
Right.
So you are a freer person. You are not tied up.
Right.
I don't like albums. I don't like films. I really like to travel in unknown domains. And but from my immediate mentors, most of the things I learned were from books.
Right. What kind of books?
History, biography, poetry.
Right.
I like very much poetry,
Right.
prose, because poetry is also free from cables. Somebody says the difference between poetry and prose is like the difference between walking and dancing.
Right.
In prose, you walk from one point to another point, from page number 1 to page number 500.
Right.
In poetry, you can open every page.
Right.
It is the movement. It is the music. It's not the destination.
Right. And it triggers the imagination.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only distinction I can say about books, there are good books and poor books.
Right.
A good book is a book that leads you to a new district.
Right.
A poor book is so busy describing things that has happened already, which are beyond your control. And I like biographies because in politics you have two things. You have your views and you have your character.
Right.
And people who have a brilliant view may have a poor character.
Right.
So better take care of your character. Don't become a victim of your temptations.
Right.
You may lose the target.
Well, what kind of a leader do you think Arafat is or has been? As you've looked at him, and it's kind of leading to the question, what kind of leader is needed on the Palestinian side to do the work with that group to bring resolution to the problem?
Leaders are subject to ages. I mean, for example, Arafat was an impressive leader when he was the head of a clandestine organization. He became a poor leader when he's supposed to become a head of a state.
Right.
So the person who can be so capable in an underground can be a catastrophe
Right.
in an organized situation.
Right.
Now, Arafat represents a certain culture
Right.
that we shouldn't forget. In that culture, contrary to the Western culture, words don't have a role of commitment. They have a role of beautification,
Of beautification?
ornamental. You speak in order to beautify life.
Oh, right.
And I mean, truth, lack of truth. It's impolite to subject yourself day in and day out to a total truth. It makes life dull.
Right.
There was a very famous Arab poet that I admire very much by the name of Kabani. I shall quote one of his poems and then I shall say what he said. He says, would the bird need the permission of the governor to fly? Would the fish need the right of the king to swim?
Right.
Would the man need the permission of the parliament to be free? You wouldn't have birds, you wouldn't have fish, you wouldn't have human beings.
Right.
And then he wrote a poem, and it says the Arabs fought so many empires, but one. And that is the empire of words. We are subjected, he says, to poetry. We are never free to say what we really want.
Right.
Now, the same goes with Arafat. He's surprised, why are you angry? And he describes something differently from what you think is a reality.
Right.
He is very far from being a fool. He has an important talent of a leader, and that is to know the state of mind and the state of heart of his people
Right.
more than anybody else.
Right.
So there's no sense to dialogue with him without taking into consideration that he's in a permanent dialogue with his people, which is a different story.
Right.
Then he has a very good memory. He remembers all names, he forgets all facts. Because people are important, facts are unimportant. So here is the poetic freedom.
Right.
Now, another thing is you have to take your fellow man as he is. Don't be angry that he's not like you, because you have a very high opinion about yourself.
Right.
And don't look for somebody else you won't find. Take into consideration his strong points, which he possesses, and his weak points, which he doesn't lack.
Right. Yeah.
And also, you know, what is again important in negotiations concerning Arafat, I would say are two things. Never try to win too much. You will lose your partner.
Yeah.
The purpose of negotiation is not winning, but to have coexistence and partnership.
Right.
So don't collect
Yeah.
winning points. You
So it's
may
not a
lose.
battle with a win or
No,
lose.
no. It's an attempt to coordinate your piano so the tones will be right and correct. And the second is never forget that for this man, prestige is utterly important. I had a friend of mine, Diane, who was the chief of army. He says, I don't care about prestige. He says, particularly the prestige of other people. Be careful about the prestige of other people.
Right.
When you go to negotiate, you negotiate with their prestige.
Right.
You're not going just to...
Impose your own upon them.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. You're talking about having diverse experiences that you've had throughout your life from being a shepherd boy, living in a kibbutz. You're talking about exposure to poetry, developing the imagination, reading biographies, learning about character, and the direct experience as a young man, as a 16-year-old, taking on leadership challenges. What recommendations would you have for us to train people to exercise responsible leadership that really makes a difference?
What you can do and should do in school, in my judgment, is to encourage the students. Most of them are so shy.
So shy.
So uncertain.
Right.
They don't have the slightest idea about their own potential. I mean, every person can do much more than he thinks.
Right.
And people, I mean, you take a student, he really doesn't know what to do with himself.
Right.
He doesn't know how to measure himself.
Mm.
So first of all, I think the first thing is tell him, look, greatness resists in everybody,
Right.
but take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the problem is not to learn how to know, but to know how to learn. And the third point is the unknown domain of imagination
Right.
is so full of proposals.
Mm.
So don't go after the dogma.
Mm.
Don't be analytical. Be dreaming. I mean, it's much better to be an unpaid dreamer than live on the salary of the routine.
Right.
Don't be paid by the routine. Pay
Right.
to the new, to the unaccepted.
Uh-huh.
And you can train, which is another point, you can train your mind as you train your body.
Right.
People go to physical exercises. There's also mental exercises.
Right.
And your brain is more in danger than your body.
Right.
Because when your body is in danger, you know it, you see it, you're fat, you're slim, you're tired.
Right.
When the brain is in danger, you don't know about it.
Right.
So all the time, challenge
Mm.
your brain. Don't go for repetition. Go all the time for challenges, for new things. And again, you will learn a great deal. You know, I never thought myself an exceptional person.
Mm.
Furthermore, I didn't have proper education. I didn't go to university.
Right.
I'm short of it.
So you never went to university?
I went to the university for a partial occasion. I mean, I've been to Harvard
Right.
at AMP,
Oh, right.
3.5 years, 2.5 months.
Uh-huh.
It was the happiest time in my life
Wow.
because I learned not only from the professors but also from the students.
Right. Yes.
It was an occasion to ask the right questions
Right.
and question the things you feel they were already answered.
Mm.
There is nothing wrong with questions. There is always wrong with answers.
Right.
So try to rethink.
Right.
Try to re-question.
Do you still live that way, even now in your 80s?
Very much. I mean, I'm charmed
Right.
when I see somebody who goes crazy, that has an unaccepted ideas.
Right.
And then during my lifetime, I saw so many things that people would never believe can be done,
Right.
and they were done.